We surrender, wax wins.
They were the first band in that scene, you know, whether you talk about Braid or Cat and Jazz, that were doing that kind of thing in the Midwest.
When Gage came along, it was sort of an homage to the whole DC thing, I think. Chicago didn't have any music that was in that vein, really.
All of us growing up were just in love with Discord Records, and then they kind of like took what they were doing on the East Coast and kind of like Midwesternized it for us.
There was a lot of pop punk stuff, there was a lot of hardcore, but there wasn't really anything in like the kind of hard rock, 2 Marshall amps, Gibson SG sound. They were really good at it. They were tight as hell and they were powerful live.
And we all started bands around the same time in the Shake Fork scene in Downers Grove. And it was really, really, I think even in retrospect, even today, a really, really important scene for a lot of bands. And I think a lot of the way that the Midwest emo scene like turned out.
The Western suburban scene was a pretty amazing, close-knit group of people and bands, basically centered around the Shake Fork Records label.
That whole thing, I think, may not have happened without Ray Kalenko. I mean, I think he was working as a janitor after high school, and he was spending his money putting out 7-inches of his favorite local bands. And it just created this huge scene. I can't remember the first one that he put out, but he put a record out, and then he would sell that at shows. And people would be like, oh, I never heard of that band. And just one record after another created this giant scene. So every time you went to a show, you'd be looking out for the new 7-inches.
It was a really great thing that we all had as a community of musicians. At the time, we took it for granted. We didn't realize how special it was until it was gone.
Everyone's older, and the story changes. It's gotta change. It's gotta change. It's gotta change. Don't you know it's gotta change? Where does it come from? Nobody knows. I found it without lifting a finger. Who's always seem to turn to the ones who laugh. I've had enough. We have had enough of. It's gotta change. It's gotta change. It's gotta change. Don't you know it's gotta change? on, shine, shine on me. You're not shining at all.
I mean, there were tons of bands around that time, and a lot of bands were really new musicians who hadn't really honed their chops so well. And I feel like Gage was kind of in another class.
All of their individual talents, which were so far above the sort of general level of talent at that point, not to like disparage any other bands that were around, but there's always going to be like a superstar or a standout.
It seemed like there were so many people like rehash doing the same shit over and over, and they were just like a fresh thing that, for me, came out of nowhere.
Gage was musically so sophisticated, but also so powerful. The song structures were like complex and surprising.
You know, there's just something about like being like really tight, or even having like some time signatures that like only you feel like you can figure out at that moment.
A lot of like other math rock bands that were happening at the time seemed like the math qualities were for the sake of like, we're gonna learn how to play our instruments. But Gage was always like twisting their songs in these complex ways towards an ends of like tension and release. Like if they had a little stutter or an extra measure in something, it wasn't just like to show everyone like, look how tricky we are.
Figuring out like where things were gonna go with Gage songs was really fun. Kind of expanding our musical sensibilities, whether it was time signature wise or just song structure wise.
There's something about Midori that, you know, it's like a hit in a weird way. There's nothing inherently hooky about it from a standpoint of like conventional pop music, but the timing, like the little changes and things are huge hooks.
The first time hearing Midori and like the time signature and the time change at the end was just like, whoa, that's awesome. You know, where it almost puts you on your ear and you're like, hold on, wait a second. Like you had to process it.
I can't write songs like that. Like it's so discordant, and it's really interesting to me because I can't do it. You know, it's like a foreign language to me or something.
Gage Live was an amazing experience. I mean, totally visceral. And if you look back at the video clips, I mean, to see this whole crowd just energized and moving and jumping, I think you'd be hard pressed to go to any show these days or within the last 10 years and see anything like that.
The energy that, you know, Kevin especially, but all of them, brought to their shows, it really was a connection with their audiences.
You felt when you saw them play live, it wasn't just regurgitating memorized material. I think they made every performance different.
There was just an energy that Gage had that other bands grew to have, but they were, for me, at the time I was maybe 17, 18, they were for me the first band that was just electric and just kind of blew you away with the first note and the first song that they played.
It was also happening on such a small scale, so it wouldn't be like seeing these bigger shows. So instead you're seeing this incredible amount of energy and just like 50 or 100 people freaking out.
I mean, it was always like almost a curse if you had to play after Gage, because they would just drain the life out of everyone, you know? It would just, you would get up after them and just be like, oh, shit.
It was hard not to be excited and just happy about music when you were watching them play.
I really think that a lot of this stuff was going on in that place in like early, like 1990, 1991 in Downers Grove. All that stuff, I think, really had legs, and all those guys went on to other bands and did really important things.
Where I was at in life, trying to learn music and trying to be in punk bands and trying to express myself with music, and I feel like they were, at least for like the scene, the band that did it best.
There was a vibe and an energy that they portrayed that made you want to play music and made you want to play in a band.
Gage sort of taught me how to be in a band. Like, Neil did all the sort of like organizing for the band, and I feel like I learned simple things, how to book a tour, a lot of the administrative things of being in a band from Neil.
We still today will be like, talk about like they just were like a machine. They would come out, set up within a minute, kick ass, and then they were off the stage in a minute, you know, just like no games.
They seemed like when they played, it was like everything was right. No one was fucking shit up. You know what I mean? Like, I never saw them break a string and like take 15 minutes out of a set to like redo things, and like they had it. They knew what they were doing, and they went in there and they delivered it.
And then Gub's lyrics were sort of like obscure but also expressive, you know? So like it really like tapped into something for me, because it was like there was an urgency to it, but it was also abstract.
I looked to Gage constantly and consistently all the time because they were so inspirational.
What Braid ended up becoming, you definitely could feel the influences from bands like Gage. So many bands at that time, it would be ridiculous for them not to credit Gage in some way, shape, or form.
Unquantifiably, I think Gage was the biggest inspiration on Cap'n Jazz. Like, we were just trying to sound like Gage.
Cap'n Jazz, Joan of Arc, or like Owls was another band we were in, a lot of counting, and I think that all sort of, you know, you can trace that all back to Gage.
Other elements obviously informed us, but they set the standard.
I think at a time where like so many people were doing the standard 4-chord punk rock, they were the ones that were like, just kind of made everyone like collectively that was in bands look at each other and be like, holy shit, what the fuck are these guys doing?
I always wondered, you know, when I was younger, what music is going to stick with me as I get older, and what am I going to go back to? And I think that Midori or any of those songs, like, it just has this sort of like eternal youthfulness.
Do you like what I'm doing? Sending out things to cherry. So simple minds kick my achievements. So say, so sweet. Sending out things to cherry. So simple minds pick my achievements. So say, so sweet. Sending out seeds of cherry. So simple minds pick my achievements. This is all I have for you. 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 Do you like what I'm doing?
After we had done Fire Tongue Burning Stomach, Kevin said he wanted to meet with me personally to give me a copy of it. He's like, just want to give you the first release on CD of this album. I'm like, awesome. And he goes, and our last. And I was like, you know, dumbfounded.
For 4.5 of those years with the same people, and I just kind of felt like maybe playing with some different people would get me to where I wanted to go musically in my mind.
I know that Ryan was reaching a point where he wanted to experiment doing new and different kinds of things musically that are nothing like Gage.
Everybody was just kind of looking to go their own path. I think Kevin and I were more aligned than anybody else as far as just giving a little bit more time to finish out this last record, at least, you know, play a little bit more. And
I felt that we stopped too early. I knew that the band was gonna end. I mean, bands stop. It's a natural course, and I really felt that we still had stuff to do.
So he explained to me that they were not going to be doing more shows, but they're going to fulfill their obligation with the remaining shows they had scheduled. One of those shows happened to be at Fireside. They played about 3 or 4 songs I had never heard before. Autopilot, you know, that was one of the songs. I talked to Kevin after the show. I said, look, we need to get these documented, live to 2 tracks. We went in one evening, set it all up, used every single microphone we had in the studio. It was magic.
Even that last 43 10-inch record is just, the songs on there were just brutal. But I mean, in a good way. It sucks that we won't really see what that next step is going to be.
They were so passionate about music and so passionate about wanting to tour and wanting to play and wanting to meet people. And it was all of that combined that made them such a special band. I mean, when they broke up, it was heartbreaking in a way, because kind of an end of an era.
Just listening to our last bit of recording that we did was probably some of the best stuff that we came up with, and probably what we were going to start making was going to be really, 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 really intense.
They were just on the brink of the time when bands like Gage and like Braid and like Captain Jazz were starting to get more of a following.
so we were playing bigger shows than we ever had. We were played a sold-out show at the Metro, which is unheard of for a little, you know, suburban band.
You know, they called it quits in '94, and that was right when that stuff was taken off.
Braid, Captain Jazz, Friction, which was before Braid, Promise Ring, Hey Mercedes. I mean, all these bands that kind of formulated out all this scene that we were involved with and grew into this really, really cool thing. It's good to see that friends of ours got something out of it.
They were able to keep it going because they kind of got up at the right time where things were kind of coalescing and coming together, and then we dropped out and they were able to keep going and take it to that next level, which is awesome.
They really kind of pioneered that movement, and they didn't really get to reap the benefits of what it became and see it like all come to fruition.
It was a difficult thing to get through. I mean, we were young kids, and I put a lot of time and a lot of energy into that band, and you just have to kind of process it and get through it, and everything's cool. It was difficult for me. It was difficult, but I don't think it was bad. I didn't hate any of those guys.
around that time when I was graduating high school and Braid started, I started playing guitar. And the person I immediately looked to for inspiration or, even at the very worst, copying exactly what he did on this one song, it was Kevin Frank, because he was just so original with his parts. They were crazy, but they made sense within the framework of a song.
Kevin's a really good and precise guitar player, but what he's also really good and precise about is trying to hurt himself while he's playing.
Kevin's leads were like so strange and snaky. It wasn't at the expense of the power of the songs, I'd never seen like such complex music have such a sort of primal energy.
I really never took lessons on guitar or anything yet. And I signed up to take lessons with like a guy who was like a local hero in the area or something. But this guy was like all like Yngwie Malmsteen and shit. Like he was doing like sweep arpeggios and stuff, and he kept on like trying to like force this like way of playing onto me, which didn't hit with me. And I remember I once brought a Gage CD into my lesson, and I played it for him, and I was like, this is what I want to sound like. I don't want to sound like fucking Yngwie Malmsteen or that shit.
I think he comes up with a crazy idea and then finds a way to work it into the song that makes sense.
When I would watch his hands, he would do like things of like playing chords and then playing like single note things in between the chords and stuff.
Then you also have, control over all the, the pickups and the knobs and stuff. And I mean, that's something that he was always all over the place, sort of adjusting things on the fly. And
Kevin was really the master at the slide. Like the one note slide. I was like the apprentice. I tried to do that as much as I could in Braid songs.
To do that back up in the chorus?
Yeah, I was throwing because I was doing it for a while.
Oh, no, you do it, because
okay.
you do it a lot better than I do.
Okay.
That's fine.
If you want to do the other part.
Yeah, I'll just do the one underneath it.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm confused too, because I was like doing them both. I was doing all the backing vocals at the same time when I was doing the other vocals, so I was like...
And Ryan, to this day, I still would consider one of the best musicians, best drummers I've ever seen live. For all of them to be so young at the time and to be in such an excellent band at such a young age is something incredible.
Ryan is so gifted, you know, and not just on drums. I mean, he picks up an instrument, he learns it in a day and a half, it seems like.
Ryan was like a chubby 15-year-old or something, but he was a solid drummer. And I remember thinking, whoa, this kid is crazy good. Yeah, he's a super talented musician. He plays guitar, plays piano.
Our original drummer of Braid, Roy Ewing, would study Ryan Rapsis. And so we just sat and watched Ryan play, and we were just in awe. The skill level and proficiency just blew our minds.
The technical prowess is sort of unquestionable, but there's like a touch that's something that you really can't learn. It's something that you've got to be born with, and everything is sort of like right where it needs to be. There's no overplaying.
We're just gonna rehearse something real quick, Greg.
To see Ryan grab cymbals and stop and do all these little tight, little intricate things, you know, I didn't even know that it really existed. It just opened up a whole new way of playing music. Tight, like math rock, different time signatures, different arrangements.
I think Gub picked a really good time to throw this idea out there. I felt like I got through that stuff, and I was able to look back on it and be like, yeah, those are some really cool times and really good bands like Captain Jazz, Sidekick Kato, Friction. And actually it was that show Bands Reunited that kind of made me think that, well, I don't have to be such a stingy fucker about this. And then I kind of looked at it, well, if any of my old bands ever decide to do something again, why the fuck not? They're cool songs.
We actually came together in this room having not picked out any songs to learn beforehand and just kind of like played to see how it felt playing together again. And I'm not gonna lie, it felt really strange.
I didn't really sit there and practice those songs for the next 15 years. In fact, you know, I kind of didn't want to listen to them for a long time because of all the emotional ties I had to them.
I've been playing in the same band for 10 years and I'm used to playing a certain way. Getting thrown back into this, it was a little foreign at first, but I liked it because it gave me an opportunity to A, play those songs again, and it pushed me as a guitar player. I mean, some of those guitar parts are pretty hard to play.
These guys kind of pretty much taught me how to play music. It was my first real band, and it was great to kind of reapproach it and see it again.
It'll be the only reunion show that I can really safely say I'll ever do in my lifetime because it's the only band that I was in that warrants it.
When somebody comes to me and says, you know, your band really affected me or inspired me to do this or do that, I mean, it's a little difficult to digest because I still feel like I haven't really done anything.
We worked really, really hard to do what we did. I mean, we non-stopped played shows, we non-stopped, let's do this, let's do that. We put a lot of effort into what we were doing, and a lot of care and a lot of heartfeltness into it. I would trade it for the world.
Reality. Thank you. Nice job, Brent.